my story started in December 2005. In fact, if I think about it, it probably goes back a few weeks before that. In that I do remember having had time off work with a few stomach infections in particular. I used to be a deputy manager of in a school for children with special needs in the residential department, and I had a few minor illnesses, as I say, and then that was in November. Then in December, I needed to have a flu jab, and I went for my flu jab. And at the time, the doctor noticed that my blood pressure was extremely high and signed me off work initially for my blood pressure. And anyhow, within 48 hours of having had the flu jab, I was feeling quite unwell, and then I partly expected that because I'd had the flu jab, but also I had wondered because he had changed my blood pressure tablets. I'd also wondered whether that was partly the cause. But I started to feel very unsteady on my feet and very lethargic, and anyhow it didn't really get better. I'd been signed off until after the Christmas. I got through the Christmas not feeling particularly brilliant. I remember at the time I brought an exercise bike and a push bike for Christmas for myself and my wife, because we wanted to get fit, because I am overweight and was feeling I needed to do something. And I can remember trying to use it, but rather than it becoming easier, becoming worse. Anyhow, we got through the Christmas, and I still unwell, and I went to see my GP. And one of the problems I had over the next year was my own GP was ill, so I saw almost a different person every time I went to see the doctor. And initially we thought that the problem was being caused by the blood pressure tablets I was on, because I was feeling dizzy when standing and just not feeling well at all. So he took me off of those blood pressure tablets, put me on my old ones, and anyhow my blood pressure had come right down to fairly normal. And so I continued, went away from there, and then within the next 2 weeks, because I think he signed me off for 2 weeks, I needed to go back again, because I'd tried to go back to work and I'd lasted the morning, but I just could not concentrate, and I was like I was far away when I was supposed to be doing things which were quite important. And when I tried to lift anyone, we did use hoists, I was feeling dizzy on doing it and very weak and really not right. And I lasted about 4 hours and had to go home. So I had to go back to the doctor because of this. And I had also noticed I'd had some other strange symptoms, like I'd struggled to put the key in my door, and I would find I would go to do something and I would just like switch off, as if my mind and my body disconnected. And anyhow, I explained this to this new locum, and she was quite concerned. She did a neurological examination. I was very unsteady on my feet, and by this time my speech was going too, and so she was quite concerned. And I didn't know it at the time, but I've since found out she suspected I had a tumour on the brain, and I was seen very quickly by a neurologist within a couple of weeks. Saw the neurologist, and he did a neurological exam, asked me a few questions to make sure that I knew what things were and that, and asked me a few questions, latched onto the fact that I had a mother who had dementia, and that I had a little bit of stress at work, and he decided that it was all down to stress. So, and I should go back to work, but he offered to do acupuncture if I would go private and see him, which I just thought was an utter nonsense. So anyhow, I was no way I could go back to work because my job involved administering medication, looking after sometimes very unwell children, and I had quite a few responsibilities in my job. It involved lifting, and at that time I was getting palpitations when I tried to do anything too much, and so it really wasn't possible. So I went back and I saw another locum. This locum, I explained that the neurologist had said there was nothing really wrong, but my condition was actually deteriorating. So he referred me to another neurologist in another local hospital, who I saw again within about 3 or 4 weeks. The second neurologist I saw decided that he would have me in to have a MRI scan. He had done various blood tests, but decided I needed to have an MRI scan, which of my head, which I had. About this time, my walking had been deteriorating anyhow. I would walk as if I was drunk, but I was still able to walk a fair distance, probably about a mile, though by the time I was getting home I was struggling. I would have occasions when I feel very light-headed, loud bangs, and there would be a bang and I would jump, and even noises that I was expecting to happen, they would make me jump. And I was really just feeling totally as if I was not firing on all cylinders, to coin a phrase. Anyhow, I had the MRI scan, and then on the May bank holiday, the first one, I woke up in the morning, and in fact we'd been away for the week, and I had the odd occasional involuntary movement, but I'd sort of dismissed it. We'd been to my son's in Wales, and we'd been out a few places, and I'd been standing and feeling really, really as if I was going to pass out, and had to find somewhere to sit in one place because I was feeling so unsteady. And anyhow, this bank holiday weekend I started to get involuntary movements, and my head was thrown back again and again repeatedly. Sometimes I was getting to a minute, and anyhow I eventually got to see the doctor for the results. I think I had to wait about in fact I had to wait until July to see him, and I told him that I was worsening. He did a very he said that the MRI hadn't shown anything. He did a very cursory neurological examination, said that there was nothing he could find wrong, and I mentioned the possibility of ME. He said he knew nothing about that, and I would have to find someone else, and he discharged me from his care and basically said I needed to go back to work, which was not very helpful at all, because by this time I was walking with a walking stick. I was having lots of involuntary movements, and my speech was gradually deteriorating, along with concentration and my ability to process information. I would find that I would go out, and if I was in a place where there was a lot of people, I would just found it as if there was too much information. It wasn't that I was anxious or depressed or anything like that. It was just that I couldn't cope with all the information that was being thrown at me. So the suggestion of going back to work was, to be quite honest, crass.